We're joined from Cairo by the political science professor and specialist in regional international security, Dr. Ahmed El Shahat. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. Let me start here with asking you about President Trump's optimism about achieving a ceasefire within a week. Why do you think he's so optimistic? What contributed to that? And given definitely the previous trials and talks and negotiations, the failed ones?
First of all, greetings to you. At the meantime, I think that Trump, after his success to stop the 12-day war between Israel and Iran and his pressure on Netanyahu to stop this war, and before then his success to stop the war between India and Pakistan in the same context, he has certain motives and incentives to pressure Netanyahu and to use the United States pressuring cards in this timing and to personalize this with his ability to negotiate and to put an end to these conflicts. The next station, which is very approaching, that we might see real action by pressuring Netanyahu to stop this war and to reach the negotiation table and come up with some kind of consensus to reach a solution. And this actually might lead to achieving the goals of the far right in the future.
What do you think about the UN Secretary General's Antonio Guterres' criticism of the US-backed aid operation in Gaza, and how can this criticism influence future aid strategies?
Naturally, the United Nations, the represented in Guterres and other officials in the United Nations completely opposed the United States carrying out the humanitarian process because they actually withdrew this card of the UNRWA and the Red Crescent. And these UN bodies were qualified to deal with the Palestinian situation, and there was an organized, structured process to distribute aid. But with the non-coordination of the United Nations led humanitarian process and dividing the strip to four zones for aid distributions, we have seen chaos and random processes, and this is of course with the Israeli cooperation responding to their commands to target civilian Gazans through the relief or aid traps. Of course, this imposes the intervention of the Secretary General Guterres, and he is now demanding to give these aid mandates back to the UN bodies as things used to be. But with this chaos, the crisis of the Palestinian people is worsening and increasing in the Gaza Strip. And this action will lead to a catastrophe, which is the ongoing starvation system imposed by Israel, and this will prevent going back to the negotiation table in a real way.
So with regard to the WHO's statement about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, what could be the immediate actions to address this dire humanitarian situation in the enclave?
The necessity of entering aid as soon as possible, especially related to medical supplies and evacuating and transferring those who need the surgical emergency operations. This lies in the hand of the United Nations bodies to distribute aid in a streamlined manner to take this crisis bed down and to reach the negotiation table and allow medical staff, whether through the Rafah crossing or any other crossings, to deal with this catastrophic scene after the targeting and bombing of all medical facilities and killing medical calibers, which is worsening the humanitarian situation. This can only be solved by opening the border crossings and giving access to real aid with a
Well, that was Dr. Ahmed, political science professor and a specialist in regional and international security. We thank you so much for joining us here on Q News.